Hello everyone, I'm Eric Scholer with the EMI. I'm going to cover the feed ingredients, grain outlook, and a little bit on poultry, and then we'll turn it over to Dr. Steve Meyer to talk about pork. So, I second Dr. Irwin's comments about volatility in the weather. I'm in the Eastern Corn Belt, family farms in Indiana, and we planted in late April and got 8 inches of rain and frost. So we replanted in mid-May, and then we got 6 inches of rain, and we planted last week on some farms. So it's been a rough spring in the Eastern Corn Belt, and that's probably been some of the reason we're starting to see some market increases, plus the dryness now that we're seeing and concerns about weather this summer. So definitely in a weather market, but I think we needed, instead of a drought map, we needed a saturation map for the Eastern Corn Belt this year. But we do have some drought developing in the Dakotas, and that's what's got the market's attention today. So we'll talk a little bit about the demand side of things. We've had very strong demand on U.S. corn. Our corn exports have been up about 25% relative to last year. One of the big drivers to this, Brazil's corn pricing coming into this fall was close to $5 a bushel. And prior to that, it was closer to $2.50 when you convert it into U.S. dollars. And they had a summer drought last year that shortened their corn supply. Now, remember, their summer crop is their small crop. Their winter crop, our winter, is their main production growing season. So they had a summer crop issue, which tightened up corn and drove up the prices there, and that helped support U.S. corn exports. Also, cheap prices tend to help corn exports as well. We've had a softening dollar. The first part of this year, we peaked in January, and it's slowly been coming down, and that improves country's purchasing power of U.S. corn as well. So we're seeing strength there. And then I'll look on the balance sheet. We've had also great ethanol production. We are exporting ethanol to Brazil today. The sugar prices are so high that it's better to produce the sugar cane into sugar rather than ethanol. And so Brazil has a need for ethanol today, so we're shipping U.S. ethanol to Brazil to satisfy their needs. Interestingly enough, California's requirements for carbon credits, corn-based ethanol doesn't qualify. Sugar-based ethanol does. So there are boats of sugar-based ethanol coming from Brazil to the U.S. to satisfy California's needs, and there's corn-based ethanol passing in the water going to Brazil. Unintended consequences of crazy policy. But so when you look at the balance sheet right now, looking for ending stocks to come in around 2.3 billion bushels from last year's crop, with a record 15.1 billion production. We go into the 17-18 crop expecting we've lost about 4 million acres. Farmers switching to soybeans because of the better returns or lack of less losses on the soybean side. Which right now anticipating production around 14 billion. USDA will come out with their balance sheet Friday this week. They will not make changes at this point to the acreage number. I doubt they'll make a change to the yield number yet, so I'd anticipate that coming in around that 14 billion level. Ethanol usage expected to remain high. Exports are expected to come down as we go into this next crop year, because Brazil's prices are back down around $2.75 a bushel. And their real has been weakening because of some political issues. If you've seen the JBS, Batistas, and the president of Brazil being implemented in potential payoffs for bribes to government officials. So that caused their currency to plummet last week, and that's going to support some of their export business. So still looking around 2.1 billion bushel carryover. And if you talk about risk, if we have some weather issues here and you take 5, every bushel is going to reduce our ending stocks by about 80 million bushels. So you take 5 bushels off that corn yield, we're still looking at a 1.7 billion carryover, which is still sizable from a historical standpoint. So when we look at markets, we're assuming pretty stable markets through this year. Now that's assuming no drought, and Dr. Taylor just said there's a possibility of drought. So we could see markets move differently. We're assuming normal weather, so we'd anticipate corn dipping down to around the 320 level by this fall, but really staying pretty model between 320 and 375 through this year. On the soybean side, it's really been the same story. Very strong export growth, up about 25% as well here, and expect that to continue. Brazil did harvest a very large, sizable crop. Their bean prices are cheaper than ours, but China continues to be a big buyer in the soy space and continuing to place orders into the U.S. Usually this time of year we'll start to see those orders flip from the U.S. to South America, and we haven't seen that take place as much this year as what we have in the past. So anticipating soybean exports finishing the year pretty strong. So we look at the balance sheet, ending stocks for 2016-17 looking around 435 million carryover, and as we go into this 2017-18 crop year, 89.5 million acres. The possibility of that number getting a little bigger is quite high because of some of the delayed planting in the eastern corn belt. With a trend line yield, still gives us around 4.2 billion bushel production. And even with strong both domestic crush and exports, looking for 480 million bushel carryover. So with that size of carryover, I'd anticipate soybean and meal prices will trend lower. We expect soy meal prices will be pushing around $270 a ton by this fall, and going into 2018 staying similar to those levels. So I'll quickly touch on poultry just to help paint the picture for Steve's outlook on the pork side as a competing protein here. The chicken industry has been continually increasing the average live weight of the bird for the last, forever. And here this year we're looking for a decline in bird weights. They've had some issues with tough breast meat. I don't know if anyone saw the article in Wall Street Journal about woody breast, but they had hard breast tissue in the meat, and it's caused some issues at food service and other applications, and so they're bringing bird weights down slightly to try to offset for that. Now, so then the only way for the industry to expand is to add additional head, but the industry is pretty well maxed out as far as slaughter capacity. Most of these plants are running clear full, some running Saturdays, and so the only way to expand is to add new plants, which is a long process for approval, finding sites, and we do have new plants being built. For each new plant, it'll add about 0.75% of capacity to the industry. We have about 3 coming online, but it takes them about 1.5 years to get to full capacity because they've got to find growers and then get financing, permitting, get those barns built. So it takes them a while to get those plants all the way to full capacity. So for 2018, looking for broiler production to increase by about 1.5%. And our per capita availability, despite the increase in production, is remaining pretty much flat because our export pace is keeping up with the growth in production on the broiler side. Just a quick look at markets. Chicken breast meat was very weak last fall. We've seen that turn around. A lot of it doing with a reduction in bird weights. If somebody's portioning sandwiches for a restaurant chain, when they were using a 9-pound chicken, they could cut 3 to 4 sandwiches or portions per chicken. When you drop back to a 7-pound chicken, you can only get 2. So it takes 1/3 more chickens to produce the same number of sandwiches. Well, that tightened up breast meat availability and sent the markets quite a bit higher this summer. Also, beef has ended up being tighter than what was previously anticipated because of strong exports and lighter weight cattle coming in, which is supporting the chicken markets. As we go into 2018, I mentioned per capita availability expecting to remain pretty stable, but we will have more protein from beef and pork, which should pressure breast meat prices. I can't move. I got to stand right here. Yeah. On chicken wings, this is like bacon for pork. We continue to see higher and higher prices with increasing per capita availability. This is a story of continued shifting in the demand curve. Consumers want to eat wings and drink beer. And so we continue to see higher prices. We're at record high wing prices right now and expect that to continue. The restaurant chains that use wings, last year we built 200 new wing restaurants in the United States. It takes 100,000 pounds of wings to service each restaurant, and which basically takes about 3/4 of a chicken plant every year to keep up with the pace of growth. And you have to grow in head count because you sell wings by the piece, and so you have to have more chickens to get a few more wings. And so right now, anticipating record high wing prices will continue on into 2018 before they start to come down, because wing concept restaurants are struggling right now with how high the prices are, and they'll probably start to feature other things. We've seen that in the past. They'll move wings as appetizers off the menu and try to slow down wing consumption. The dark meat markets have been very strong. I think Steve's going to second this on the pork side as far as export demand. We ship about 45% of our leg quarters out of the country. We've had a weakening U.S. dollar since January. We've had some trade disruptions with Brazil because of meat packing inspection issues, which caused some trade blockage. And then for Brazil, who's the second largest poultry exporter globally. And then we have over 40 countries that have high-path avian influenza. And that's disrupted the ability to move product between countries. It's also impacted production globally, and that's driven up our export demand on poultry.